Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you Ms. Stephanie Williams, who is the Chief Diversity Officer for the City of Worcester. She is in her first year tenure, and we would like all of you to bring her out with a warm round of applause. Thank you, Ms. Stephanie Williams.
Now that's a DJ. So good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Kind of? Okay, I'll project. Can you hear me okay now? Great. So it's both an honor and a privilege to be here today to recognize Frederick Douglass's speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." In 1852, Frederick Douglass audaciously addressed his audience at a critical period in America. In historical speech, Douglass bravely reminded white America that as they recognized the ideals of American freedom and independence on this holiday, hundreds of thousands of black Americans were still considered to be property rather than people. And that freedom was celebrated despite the fact that black Americans were still being auctioned off for sale. Douglass spoke on how, in the deep, still darkness of midnight, he had been often aroused by the dead heavy footsteps and cries of the chain gangs that passed outside of his door, but yet, on this day, in the heat of the summer, we still gather up our families and fill our bellies celebrating the American freedom. He asserts that American ideology outlined in our Constitution is inconsistent in the application in society. Douglass's argument communicates the freedom that our country extends is only so far as one's own shade of pigmentation. Indeed, a nation cannot rightfully celebrate liberty for all without commemorating the belated freedom of people it kept in chains. He argued that slavery was and is an immoral contradiction to America's interpretation and celebration of freedom. Douglass went on to say, "The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine." His assertions are ones we must ruminate on when the time comes to pull out the grill and light up the fireworks, when it's time to head down to the Esplanade to watch the lights explode over the Charles River. Freedom isn't picnics and parades, it's politics, economics, and social power for all people. Douglass's speech is as relevant today as it was in 1852. Our current political climate speaks volumes to our country's current state of affairs. If Frederick Douglass rightfully asked the question, "What to the slave was the 4th of July?" then contemporary African Americans might similarly ask, "What does Independence Day mean to them against the backdrop of mass incarceration, racial segregation, mass unemployment, mass poverty, and COVID-19 pandemic that has disproportionately scarred communities of color, more explicitly black communities?" When America tells black people they have been emancipated, one must read the fine print. Holidays, like memories, are chosen. They're collective social agreements employed to acknowledge an event or a person. Choosing to remember palatable histories over painful histories serves no one. It merely fosters fantasy. So this 4th of July, let's celebrate and support this growing nationwide movement to wrestle openly and honestly with that history in a way that has never been done before. Reconsider the meaning of freedom and racial justice through a historical lens, especially this year, when so much of America's true history is finally being brought out into the open. So what are we really celebrating when we break out the red, white, and blue? Justice and freedom for all? Let us not be disillusioned to the fact that racism supported by slavery still challenges our nation. All Americans do not enjoy freedom and justice to the same degree. Douglass closes his speech by arguing that when America at long last fulfilled its original promise, matching word on paper with public deeds and action, it would then give new meaning to the patriotic expressions of the love of this country. This holiday will not have the meaning it deserves until we inject knowledge into ignorance, justice into poverty, and equity into emancipation. May we all muster up the courage and the strength as the nation to seize this opportunity of this awakening and take concrete steps for change. First among them, we have to acknowledge was when we rightfully recognized Juneteenth as a federal holiday. We must continue to confront the past in order to create a new future, expansive enough to include us all, because for some of us, freedom is conditional, not guaranteed. And none are free until all are free. So that's what the 4th of July means to a slave.
Thank you. Thank you. Coming to the stage right now is one of Worcester's most renowned singers, a person who has been at the Worcester Woolstocks game and has now graced us with her presence today. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Sharon Jones.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Stephanie. Powerful words from a powerful woman. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber ways of grain, for purple mountains' majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and he crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dreams that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, my sweet America, God shed his grace on thee, and he crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. I'm talking about America, sweet America. God shed his grace on thee, and he crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. He crowned thy good with brotherhood. Don't forget that. That's who America is. God crowned it. God blessed America. He crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Talking about America.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Sharon Jones. Again, for those that would like to begin the reading, please line up on my left-hand side, and we will begin the reading. We just need someone to come up first. There we go.
Mr. President, friends, fellow citizens, the task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study for its proper performance. The papers and the placards say that I am to deliver a 4th of July oration. This certainly sounds large and out of the common way. For it is true that I have often had the privilege to speak to this beautiful hall and to address many who now honor me with their presence. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in the getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I am here today, to me, is a matter of astonishment as well as gratitude.
This, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This to you is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day and to the act of your great deliverance. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. You are even now only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon.
Fellow citizens, the simple story is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. The style and title of your sovereign people, in which you now glory, was not then born. You were under the British crown. Your fathers esteemed the English government as the home government. England, as the fatherland, although a considerable distance from your home, imposed, in the exercise of its parental prerogatives, upon its colonial children such restraints, burdens, and limitations as, in its mature judgment, it deemed wise, right, and proper.
But your fathers, who had not adopted the idea of the infallibility of government and the absolute character of its act, presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and the injustice of some of those burdens and restraints. They went so far as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive, and altogether such as ought not to be quietly submitted to. I scarcely need say, fellow citizens, that my opinion of those measures fully accords with that of your fathers, feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government. Your fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victim of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. With brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression. Just here, the idea of a total separation of the colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much more so than we, at the distance of time, regarded. The timid and prudent of the day were of course shocked and alarmed by it. Their opposition to the then dangerous thought was earnest and powerful. But amid all their terror and affrighted vociferations against it, the alarming and revolutionary idea moved on, and the country with it.
On the 2nd of July, 1776, the old Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshippers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution. We seldom hit upon resolutions drawn up in our day whose transparency is at all equal. Resolved that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown.
Citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny.
Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory.
They loved their country better than their own private interests, and all will concede that in a rare virtue that ought to command respect. He who will intelligently lay down his life for his country is a man whom it is in human nature to despise. Your fathers staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on the cause of their country.
They were peacemen, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny. With them, nothing was settled that was not right. With them, justice, liberty, and humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such men. They were great in their day and generation. Their solid manhood stands out the more as we contrast it with these degenerate times.
How circumspect, exact, and proportionate were all their movements. How unlike the politicians of an hour. Their statesmanship looked beyond the passing moment and stretched away in strength to the distant future, fully appreciating the hardship to be encountered, firmly believing in the right of their cause, wisely measuring the terrible odds against them. Your fathers, the fathers of this republic, laid the cornerstone of the national superstructure, which has risen and still rises in grandeur around you. Of this fundamental work, this day is the anniversary.
My business, if I have any hero today, is with the president. I accept time with God and his cause. Is the ever living now. We have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present, and to the future. Now is the time, the important time. Your fathers have lived, died, and have done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die, and you must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's share in the labor of your fathers, unless your children are to be blessed by your labor. You have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence.
Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice, embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us. And I am, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us.
Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light, and my burden easy and delightful. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us.
The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions, whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them.
My subject, then fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day from the slave's point of view. Standing here, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare, with all my soul, that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we return to the declarations of the past or the professions of the present, the conduct of this nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future.
Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity which is outraged, in the name of liberty which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce, with all the emphasis I can command, everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command. And yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, or who is not at heart a slaveholder, shall not confess to be right and just.
I fear I hear someone of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue?
Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia which, if committed by a black man, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being?
Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of a slave to read or write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may consent to argue that the manhood of the slave. When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle of your hills, when the fish of the sea and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then I will argue that the slave is a man.
For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. It is not astonishing that, while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing buildings, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while you're engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, that we are called upon to prove that we are men.
Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation, as a matter beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans to show that men have a natural right to freedom? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him.
What am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to saunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employments for my time and strength than such arguments would imply.
What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine, that God did not establish it, that our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought. That which is inhumane cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? I cannot. The time for such an argument is past.
At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could I reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach without sarcasm and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The property of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
What, to the American slave, is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty, an unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages.
There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival.
Take the American slave trade, which is especially prosperous just now and carried on in all the towns in cities in one half of this confederacy. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth. It is called the internal slave trade. In order to divert it from its horror, which the foreign slave trade is contemplated, that trade has long since been denounced by this government as piracy and as an execrable traffic. To arrest it, this nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa. Everywhere in this country, it is safe to speak of this foreign slave trade as a most inhuman traffic opposed alike to the laws of God and man. It is, however, a notable fact that while so much extrication is poured by Americans upon those engaged in the foreign slave trade, the men engaged in the slave trade between the states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable.
Behold the practical operation of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade, sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market. You know what is a swine drover? I will show you a man drover. They inhabit all our southern states. They perambulate the country and crowd the highways of the nation with droves of human stock. You will see one of these human flesh jobbers armed with pistol, whip, and bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children from the Potomac to the slave market at New Orleans. These wretched people are to be sold singly or in lots to suit purchasers. They are food for the cotton field and the deadly sugar mill.
Mark the sad procession as it moves wearily along, and the inhuman wretch who drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-chilling oaths as he hurries on his affrighted captives. There, see the old man with locked, thin, and gray. Cast one glance, if you please, upon that young mother whose shoulders are bare to the scorching sun, and her briny tears falling on the brow of her babe in her arms. See, too, that the girl of 13 weeping, yes, weeping, as she thinks of her mother from whom she has been torn. The drove moves tardily. Heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly you hear a quick snap, like the discharge of a rifle. The fetters clank, the chains rattle simultaneously. Your ears are saluted with a scream that seemed to have torn its way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of the slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you saw with the babe. Her speed has faltered underneath the weight of her child and her chains. That gash on her shoulder tells her to move on.
Follow the drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever. And never forget the deep, sad sobs that arose from the scattered multitude. Tell me, citizens, where under the sun can you can witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking? Yet this is but a glance at the American slave trade as it exists at this moment in the United States.
Fellow citizens, this murderous traffic is today in active operation in this boasted republic. In the solitude of my spirit, I see clouds of dust raised on the highways of the South. I see the bleeding footsteps. I hear the doleful wail of fettered humanity on the way to the slave markets, where the victims are to be sold like horses, sheep, and swine, knocked off to the highest bidder. There I see the tenderest ties ruthlessly broken to gratify the lust, caprice, and rapacity of the buyers and sellers of men.
By an act of the American Congress, not yet 2 years old, slavery has been nationalized in its most horrible and revolting form. Mason and Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia, and the power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children as slaves remains no longer a mere state institution, but is now an institution of the whole United States.
The power is coextensive with the Star-Spangled Banner in American Christianity. Where these go, may also go the merciless slave hunter. Where these are, man is not sacred. He is bird for the sportsman's gun. By that most foul and fiendish of all human decrees, the liberty and person of every man are put in peril. Your broad republican domain is hunting ground for men.
Your lawmakers have commanded all good citizens to engage in this hellish sport. Your president, your secretary of state enforce as a duty you owe your free and glorious country, and to your God, that you do this accursed thing. Not fewer than 40 Americans have, within the past 2 years, been hunted down and without a moment's warning, hurried away in chains and consigned to slavery and excruciating torture. Some of these have had wives and children, dependent on them for bread, but of this no account was made. The right of the hunter to his prey stands superior to the right of marriage and to all rights in this republic, the rights of God included.
For black men, there are neither law nor justice, humanity nor religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he consigns to slavery and $5 when he fails to do so. The oath of any two villains is sufficient under this hell-black enactment to send the most pious and exemplary black man into the remorseless jaws of slavery. His own testimony is nothing. He can bring no witness for himself. The Minister of American Justice is bound by the law to hear but one side, and that side is the side of the oppressor. Let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that in tyrant-killing, king-hating, people-loving, democratic, Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their offices under an open and palpable bribe and are bound in deciding in the case of a man's liberty to hear only his accusers.
In glaring violation of justice, in shameless disregard of forms of administering law, in cunning arrangement to entrap the defenseless, and in diabolical intent, this fugitive slave law stands alone in the annals of tyrannical legislation. Americans, your Republican politics, not less than your Republican religion, are flagrantly inconsistent. You boast of your love of liberty, your superior civilization, your pure Christianity, while the whole political power of the nation is solemnly pledged to support and perpetuate the enslavement of 3 million of your countrymen. You hurl anathemas at the crowned heads of tyrants of Russia and Austria and pride yourselves on your democratic institutions, while you yourselves consent to be the mere tools of bodyguards of the tyrants of Virginia and Carolina. You invite your shores fugitives of oppression from abroad and honor them with banquets, greet them with ovations, cheer them, toast them, salute them, protect them, pour out your money to them like water. But the fugitives from your land you advertise, hunt, arrest, shoot, and kill.
You discourse eloquently on the dignity of labor, yet you sustain a system which, in its very essence, casts a stigma upon labor. You can bare your bosom to the storm of British artillery to throw off a 3-penny tax on tea, and yet wring the last hard-earned farthing from the grasp of the black laborers of your country. You profess to believe that of one blood God made all nations of men to dwell on the face of all the earth, and hath commanded all men everywhere to love one another. Yet you notoriously hate and glory in your hatred all men whose skins are not colored like your own.
Greetings. To declare before the world, and are understood by the world to declare, that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet, you hold securely, in a bondage which, according to our own Thomas Jefferson, is worse than ages of that which your fathers rose in rebellion to oppose, a seventh part of the inhabitants of your country.
Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further on your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base precedent, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It saps the foundation of religion. It makes your name a hissing. And by a word to a mocking earth, be warned. A horrible reptile is coiled up in your nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and fling from your hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 million crush and destroy it forever.
Allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in the operation which must be invisible work the downfall of slavery. I therefore leave off where I began, with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles contains in the genes of America institution my spirits and cheered by the obvious tenderness of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other, trot round in the same old path of its fathers without interreference.
The time was when such could be done, but a change has now come over the affairs of mankind. Walled cities and empires have become unfashionable. The arms of commerce have borne away the gates of the strong city. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. Wind, steam, and lightning are its chartered agents. Oceans no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. In the fervent aspiration of William Lloyd Garrison, I say, let every heart join in saying it.
Now, if all of us can all read together, all of you that have your scripts,
Godspeed the day when human blood shall cease to flow, and every crime we understand the claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil, good, not blow by blow. That day will come, all feuds to end, and change into a faithful friend each foe.
All right. Thank you. Brother Cedric. All right. That concludes our reading.
Thank you very much for coming out today. We would like to extend anyone who is interested in being a part of this reading and going forth to just check with myself or Tanner. Tanner's over in the red, and he'll take your name and number and we'll get in touch with you. Just trying to keep it kosher. Try to keep my eyes on my paper like my teachers told me. Soon as it thinks it's over, poof. Number one on the charts, I'm there vicariously. Or there they go by us, they pushing negative narratives. I'm ready though. Cops want to pull me over, embarrass me. Abusing power, you never knew me. Though I was ignorant as a juvenile, police pulled their guns like they scared of me. And we're used to how crackers treat us. Now that's the scary thing. Want everything we're good at and we cherish it. Now we all fed up and brothers coming back for everything. Rock stars. Just watch the news. They burning cop cars. Kill another brother, break the law, they call us outlaws. What happened? Want us to keep it peaceful. Some of you may say, wait. That is the baby. His last line was, we want you to keep it peaceful. Wait. Yes, we want you to be peaceful. We passed Juneteenth holiday. We are here. We're at the new beginning. Let me say that again. We're at another new beginning. We have a holiday for recognizing oppression of black people. But wait. It's a federal holiday. And according to the Office of Personnel Management, there are only 17% of federal employees who are identified as black. That combined with black only comprises 20% of all federal employees. So only 2 black folks out of 10 benefit from this holiday. 2 of 10. But we must not wait. Wait was said in the 1960s. Wait, according to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. This is the 1960s. Today we are waiting. John Lewis Voting Rights Act, George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020. There has been a response in the streets of Minneapolis in the context of the looting in that community. In the context of former President Trump saying, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Tamika Mallory let it be known. America has looted black people. America looted the Native Americans when they first came here. So looting is what you do. We learned it from you. We learned violence from you. So if you want us to do better, then damn it, you do better. We will end this portion of the program with our modern day Frederick Douglass words of Miss Tamika Mallory. We turn the last portion of this program over to a newbie to this stage. She is a daughter of the Most High. She is here to bring us home. Miss Latasha Hughes.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for being here and for hanging out in the rain. What a beautiful program, and I'm just appreciative to be a part. It's been a long time since I've sang. It's been a long time since I've worn a robe for my Second Baptist Church. But I don't think it's about the pat of the bell moment. I think it's more about the words. And if you do know it, I want you to sing along Amazing Grace, which I think is very appropriate to close this program. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost,
now I see was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears released. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangerous toils and snares, I have already come. Was grace that kept me safe this far, and grace that will lead me home. Thank you guys. Have a great day. I'm gonna give you back to your host, to Cedric.
Thank everyone for being a part of today's reading. We want to thank all of the people who came out and our supporters as well, the sponsors of this project. Worcester Roots Project, The Village, Music Mania Television, Worcester Cultural Coalition, Worcester Historical Museum, Office of the City Manager, Worcester, Office of the Mayor, Worcester, Office of the Multicultural Affairs Office at Worcester State University, Mass Hire Central Region Workforce Board, Mass Cultural Coalition, Worcester Arts Council, Worcester Public Library. Thank you for all of the media that came out, WCCA, SMC, all of you guys for standing out here and being a part of what we do every year in the rain. Again, if you're interested in being a part of what we got going on, Tan is over there to my left. You can talk to him as well. Again, thank you. Have a good afternoon.